Good day to you. I'm Andy Rogers from the Westcountry Rivers Trust, and I'd like to introduce our paper SPONGE2020 Local Action Project using nature-based solutions to reduce surface water flooding and deliver multiple benefits. Setting the context, SPONGE2020 is an Interreg 2 project, part funded by the ERDF. In Somerset, it is being delivered by ourselves in partnership with Somerset County Council. Its objectives are implementing targeted interventions to prevent surface water flooding and improve the urban landscape that have been co-designed and co-created with communities. This is being done using the Local Action Project LAP approach. The main output of LAP was a framework for the assessment and targeting of nature-based solutions that could then be co-created, refined and tailored through consultation with local stakeholders and with the locally specific data and evidence. This approach leads to the creation of a shared resource that becomes a powerful enabler for people attempting to deliver local actions in the urban environment. A key success criteria for the project was therefore the demonstration that the resources approach developed can be upscaled and transferred to new locations across the country at a variety of spatial scales. Hence why SPONGE2020 represented an excellent living laboratory in which to test and study the approach. The LAP data and evidence review process is comprised of several key stages, all based on quality strategic evidence and information, which needs presenting in a clear way to help build understanding and consensus of the local choices, priorities and ambitions. You need to undertake a landscape scale assessment of needs and opportunities for MBS to deliver benefits. You need to characterise high priority and multi-opportunity target areas for MBS delivery. You need to identify specific candidate sites. You need to undertake conceptual MBS intervention designs and optioneering for co-design with stakeholders, and an estimation and/or measurement of the ecosystem service benefits to be realised. There also needs to be links into available funding and resources to support the desired interventions. It is important to consider any existing priority areas and drivers for improving natural infrastructure, including legislative drivers and restrictions, socio-economic patterns, funding incentives, or local plans. Where these social drivers are present, they can represent both an enabler and motivator for action to deliver NBS into these areas, but they could also potentially be significant blockers to environmental actions. During LAP1, a simple but rigorous framework was developed for the assessment of natural capital and ecosystem services derived benefits in urban landscapes. The assessment method characterises a series of 12 indicators visualised in a wheel graphic, which can be used to establish a baseline of the net benefits experienced by people living in a specific or across a number of communities. Once created, the wheels become a powerful decision support tool that can facilitate a strategic and collaborative prioritisation of opportunities. In that, they help build a mandate for action and target that action into the areas of greatest potential benefit. By giving stakeholders an engaging and highly visual multi-parameter assessment of need and opportunity for action, the wheels stimulate an informed discussion among local stakeholders, practitioners and decision makers. In Taunton, the LAP wheels were customised to account for the most relevant priorities for the town. This happened through a series of workshops and meetings with practitioners and other professionals. Here is an example benefits wheel. As you can see, it is split into 4 benefit types: social, cultural, environmental and economic. The spoke segments give an excellent visual indication of individual benefits, as well as an overview of the benefit groups. Another output of the Local Action Project was the Urban NBS Intervention Toolbox. This catalogue of interventions was compiled by reviewing existing topologies of green infrastructure, components and sustainable drainage systems. The key natural asset topologies and interventions to be restored and delivered during SPONGE2020 were selected from the LAP Intervention Toolbox and adapted for use during the co-design and co-creation process undertaken in Taunton. Once target locations and potential sites were identified, Various methods were used to engage community groups and residents and inform them of the upcoming opportunity to collaborate in the project. The messages and language used in this stakeholder engagement process were aligned with the audience's prior knowledge and tailored to focus not only on issues such as flooding and water quality, but also on placemaking, creating resilient communities, and the health and well-being values of SUDs and green infrastructure in urban communities. Critical elements of the Sponge 2020 approach have been the engagement of local stakeholders and their participation in the design and creation of the NBS and SUDs, helping people understand how surface water flooding affects them and how it is affecting others, and inspiring and empowering citizens to take action to increase the resilience of their town or neighbourhood. For co-creation approaches to be demonstrably effective in delivering additional benefits, there is a vital need for their implementation to be underpinned by a robust monitoring and evaluation methodology. This allows practitioners to comprehensively assess and report the delivery of both the outputs delivered by the project and the successful realisation of its intended outcomes. For Sponge 2020, we utilised a number of methods. For example, you can see here we introduced an online Google form for each partner to fill in post-event to gather that monitoring data. The evaluation of the data was used to improve the project deliverables, such as the guidance pack shown here, and the online toolbox and other elements themselves. So looking more specifically at our findings in Taunton. For socio-economic priorities and drivers, these maps highlight two of these indicators in Taunton: social deprivation and health. Social deprivation data came from the 2015 Index of Multiple Deprivation, and the health data came from the 2011 General Health Status. The Taunton Dean Infrastructure Opportunities document is also highlighted as an existing strategy being implemented across Taunton. It is well documented that areas of social deprivation are often linked to poorer health, reduced air quality, increased crime rates, and lower access to natural spaces. The next stage of the process was to perform a comprehensive audit of the environmental infrastructure, i.e. the natural capital in the landscape, and to characterise the ecosystem services these assets currently provide. This slide gives an example of some of the natural capital elements that form part of the natural capital assessment. For example, allotments, parks, gardens, and green areas. So here is an example utilising the wheel to determine current natural capital. Data for this included park and amenity green spaces within Taunton, and how parks and amenity impacts each of the benefits within the wheel. The level of provision of each indicator of net benefit or need in the LEP wheel of metrics were then assessed and mapped individually to characterise how each area is performing against each benefit metric. Each of the 12 metrics were assessed in detail for each of the areas and neighbourhoods of Taunton, and the results are shown in this slide and the next. So the metrics on this slide shows things like water quality, flows, flood damage, property value. So here is the final summary map of the benefits assessment, showing all the wheels together for each ward across the whole of Taunton. So all of this data together and the use of the benefits wheels gave us our Sponge 2020 priority areas, looking at natural assets, society and economy, and the ecosystem services provision. And all of this led to our priority areas in a nice little map format here, and that's where we focused our work. Look at a couple of quick examples. So Selworthy Special School. Selworthy Special School in Taunton is a school for children and young people with learning disabilities aged 4 to 19. The children, parents and staff were involved in designing as well as planting the rain garden. In addition, there were workshops and interactive lessons used to educate and engage those taking part around flooding and climate change. At Middleway, the Trust held several meetings with Middleway residents. These engagement events helped with site selection and the rain garden design itself. Following the residents' request, the garden was planted with a variety of plant species that attracted wildlife and created an attractive garden. Bench and stepping stones were added to allow them to interact and enjoy the garden. Thanks very much for your attention. There were many more sub-projects within this project. Please follow the links and have a look and get back to us if you would like any more information.